This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rapin. This week, I'm joined by two French fries that I found under the seat of my 1996 four-door Honda Civic, Nick White.
I feel like there's a story there. I'm not so sure I want to hear it.
And Kait Lamphere.
I'm still salty.
Oh, gross. All right.
No.
Welcome
That's
back to I
it.
Read
Too
Comic
bad.
Books.
We're done.
Thank you guys for joining us this week. I'm very excited. We're back after a summer break. Really hope that you enjoyed all the Patreon stuff that we dropped in the feed. A Better Batmobile episode 1 is in that feed. That came out last week. I hope you dug that, as well as everything else. Before we get into things, I got two special announcements. Number one, I want to shout out our new patrons, Roger and Megan. Welcome to I Read Comic Books. We're so excited for you to get access to all the backlog stuff that we have on Patreon. Let us know what you think. Send us an email at ircbpodcast.com. And if you aren't a member of the Patreon, why not? It's over at patreon.com/ircbpodcast. We'd love to hear what you think about all that stuff. So sign up for at least a month, give us a try, and let us know. If you didn't like it, send me an email. I'll personally read it and cry, but I will feel good that at least you are giving us a little bit of attention. The other thing I want to say is you may have seen this on Twitter. You may have seen this on our Discord if you're already a member, but the entire IRCB crew had some amazing portraits made by Flynn Nichols, Ice Level, at Ice Level on Twitter. They are so fun, super cute. You're going to see them on this week's episode show art. Make sure you check them out. Go check out Ice Level on Twitter. Commission something from them. They're incredible. But anyways, let's get into things. Let's talk about comic books because I have two legally mandated questions that I have to ask because every week on I Read Comic Books, we are here to talk about comic books. And those questions are, how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Nick.
I've been good. I know everyone hasn't had a West Michigan weather watch for about a month. I don't know how you've been determining how to go outside or when to go outside. That's a trick question. You should never go outside. Right. It's a dangerous place. And West Michigan weather watch would be don't go to the beach. Apparently, it's just a red flag, double red flag, constantly.
What does that mean?
That means like don't go swimming, which I don't need an invitation to not go swimming.
Okay.
I also don't like sand. I think that's been elaborated upon by Hayden Christensen in 2005. I don't remember which movie that was in. As for comics I've been reading, can I just say this about manga? I used to make fun of this a little, but I do like how the title of most manga pretty much tells you whether or not it's for you, for the most part. Mm-hmm. It'll be like, oops, I was an old man and I fell in a sewer grate and I got transported into a high fantasy kingdom where I am the jester. And you're like, okay, I know exactly what this book is. Perfect. It's for me. Mm-hmm. That's fine. In the same vein, I read a book called Nights with a Cat, Volume 1. And no, that's like nothing weird. It is literally a guy whose younger sister moves in with him and she brings her cat. Literally, yeah, this is not the most complicated plot you'll ever read. This is not like the sequel to Mind Management, okay? Literally, she brings her cat with her, and this guy who's never had a cat before and not really been around cats much basically attempts to befriend the cat, which anyone who knows anything about cats knows that that's going to be met with mixed results. I do want to point this out. I put in notes, he attempts to befriend his furry roommate, but I'm talking about the cat. His sister isn't a furry. Okay. Not that there's a problem with being a furry. I just want to clear that up for anyone who reads the Patreon notes later. That's what's going on there.
Okay.
So yeah, he's like he struggles with all the typical cat problems, the cat who excitedly brings you the cat toy and then just doesn't want to do anything with it. Like the cat's so excited to bring it to you, but that's it. We all know about the cat who knocks things off of ledges or tables, who wants to hang out in cardboard boxes and doesn't care about any like actual bed or anything that you've made or built for the cat. It's a lot of stuff that I think people who are cat owners can relate to, but also because the internet is for cats, I think most people at this point can probably relate to.
I have not heard someone say that out loud in many, many years. The internet is for cats. Oh my gosh, Nick.
Let me tell you about E-Bomb's world while I'm at it, and then we'll go down the list. We'll revisit Mark Zuckerberg's Angel Fire websites that he made. So yeah, it's a nice low stakes read. It's charming and endearing without being too saccharine or like trying to lean into the humor, because it's it'll bring a smile to your face, but it's not like you're going to be rolling in the aisles. Uh yeah, it's just an endearingly fun low stakes book, and I would recommend it. One thing I did notice that was kind of interesting, and I haven't seen manga that does this. It's largely black and white, like most manga is, but then it uses occasional spots of color to highlight items. Like in one scene where the cat discovers the cardboard box, like the cardboard box will be painted brown. It'll just be like a splash of brown over the box, and it almost reminded me of like how Black Magic uses color, by Greg Rucka. But yeah, I hadn't seen that before.
I've seen that. It's so funny that you say that, because I've noticed that every once in a while in Kaiju number 8 in the Weekly Shonen Jump app, they'll have like every once in a while there'll be a spot of red. And One Punch Man recently had a couple of like one-off full color page inserts. I think it's like a rare thing. Like maybe a book is super popular, or if it was like in the first couple of chapters, or maybe even the first chapter, they're like, this is your special chapter, first chapter, you can do something extremely like striking to draw people into your book. It's used very rarely, but I think it's done for like an impact thing, because like you said, these books are typically black and white, and like they're printed in such like cruddy paper on a weekly basis, that they would really have to go above and beyond in order to get that color stuff. That's interesting that this book does that.
Yeah, that was definitely something I hadn't really seen before. I've definitely seen with a lot of books how either like the first couple pages of a trade, or maybe even the first full, what do you want to call it, story segment, chapter, the first whole chapter might be in color, but I'd never seen it where it's like just sporadically throughout the whole thing. So that was weird. I also read Hellboy and the B.P.R.D. Time is a River. Story by Mike Mignola, art by Mark Laszlo, colors by Dave Stewart, letters by Clem Robbins. Because the last two are always going to like, maybe like Mike Mignola just can't get them to leave his house, and that's just that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Dave and Clem, they won't leave. They're just forever squatters on Mike Mignola titles. I'm kidding. They're both very talented dudes. All I really want to say much about this book is that I'm sort of done with the last couple issues of Hellboy and the B.P.R.D. Sort of just jumping all over the place. I think for those who kind of follow Hellboy lately, Hellboy and the B.P.R.D. tends to have a year at the end of it. Currently, they're on 1957. And for the last couple months, they've removed and abandoned the year thing, so that they can just literally jump all over the place and tell whatever story they want. I think this one, for example, is like, I think 1989. That was fine, but like, I'm kind of done with it. Like, they had their fun. They had an issue where they got Gabriel Walta to do the art. That was fine. They found an excuse to get Hellboy to engage with Greek mythology and have a cover issue where he's wearing a toga, and that was kind of funny. But I'm sort of done with the gags and goofs, and I'd like to go back to my traditional 4-issue story arc, especially because there were a lot of interesting and kind of fun supplementary characters in the ongoing narrative that are just kind of being, we haven't seen them for a while. And in as much as Hellboy canon is weird and screwy, and I think most people don't have a super huge inclination to like deep dive into it, I would just like the sort of continuous overarching story back. We had our fun, Mike. Let's just but I feel like we've flown too close to the sun. I feel like it's when Buster Bluth, they build him the bike in Arrested Development, and then he's like, that was too much excitement. That's me. Like, I've had my fun, and I want to go back to my regimented reading.
Sure.
And then briefly, I will just bring up, because it came out a couple weeks ago, and of course we were on break, and I'm just sick of everybody like clamoring and shouting at me about tell us about your takes on the Alien Annual, they say.
It's all over the Discord, all over Twitter.
All over. It's so annoying. I leave the house, the neighbors are shouting at me. It might be about the Alien Annual. It might be about other things.
Nick, tell us about this Alien Annual, please.
Yeah. So this is the team that we've had basically from the beginning of when Alien restarted with Marvel in 2021. Philip Kennedy Johnson on writing, Salvador LaRocca on art, Guru EFX on colors, Clayton Coles on letters. Kind of an interesting choice here. It's not a follow-up to the second arc, aka the most recent arc we had, Revival. It doesn't take place in between the two. It's actually a prequel to the first arc. It's a lot of fan service. It's Philip Kennedy Johnson obviously basically took the main bullet points of what people like about Alien and Aliens and more or less squeezed the whole thing into an issue. The alien that goes around the ship and slowly picks off the crew from Alien, and then also the ragtag military group of platoon of heroes taking on these alien foes from Aliens. And giving it to people. And, I think there's nothing wrong with fan service every once in a while. It just becomes a problem when fans come to expect it. So it's fine. I think there's a really fun little twist for people that remember the first movie well enough. I won't say anything more about that. And I honestly think it was one of the strongest issues of the run. Of course, this is the last issue with this team. There will be a new artist. I don't think they've announced a date for that book, which at least in some promotional materials, they decided to change the name of the book to A, right? So we made fun of Squirrel Girl getting retitled like 4 times in a year, but they've decided, it looks like, we'll see if it's true, that Alien is going to become just A for and that's the letter A, not EH. Like, that would be something.
Yeah, I think we got.
Yeah.
They're gearing up so that they can eventually do an AVP book, and they're going to have a P book, and there's going to be a V book, and it's going to be something. just get excited for the alphabet of horror books from Disney and Marvel. But before we get any further into that, Kate, how about you? How have you been? How have comic books been? What have you been reading?
I've been good. I'm going to say that I enjoyed the July break from recording new episodes, but I also missed everyone and having plans on Sundays. So
yeah.
I've been trying to get through the 2022 Goodreads reading challenge. So I've read quite a few books off of that.
Nice.
I do want to say that I've also been sending content to Renee to make TikToks for our TikTok account. So if you haven't seen that and you're on TikTok, get on there and comment on all of these library books that I'm reading and sharing there. I always make sure to send him pictures and then no one comments. And I'm like, is it supposed to be a commenting social media? Is this just not what TikTok does?
Kate's like, please get on here because I feel like I'm shouting into the void.
Yeah, exactly.
It's social
Someone
media.
Talk back.
It's mostly shouting into the void. Yeah.
Okay, I'm doing it right.
Yeah, you're fine. You're totally fine.
I most recently read Dragon Hoops by Jean Lewin Yang. This was Matt D's pick for the reading challenge. This is the same creator that wrote Boxers and Saints and also wrote a number of the Avatar Last Airbender comics, if you're familiar with those. I see those all over the place. So if you read comics, you've probably at least seen them on shelves. This is a nonfiction book about a basketball team at a high school that this creator teaches at. He's also a teacher on top of a comic book creator. Like, this guy must be incredibly busy. He also has kids.
Yeah.
So
it's this weird thing where some creators, they find an extra day in the week. I think that's what happens.
Yeah. I mean, he actually talks about how he splits his time too. That's part of the book, which is really interesting. This book isn't entirely just about this basketball team. It's also about just the creator's process to create the book, to decide to write this book. He actually talks about how he's not even a sports person, so he doesn't have any idea how to write about sports, but this is the story that he wants to tell. So there's these like
what?
Yeah, there are multiple conversations with his wife where he's like, I have to write this book, and she's like, so then write the book, and he's like, but I don't know sports.
How uncomfortably meta does this get? Because this sounds very uncomfortable. Like, this is like 3 degrees of meta now.
It works.
It sounds like we need to read it, Nick.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
We should probably finish and participate in the Goodreads reading challenge and read this book.
Yeah,
sneaky. I like that pivot there. Ooh.
This is a sports book, though. Like, even though there's a significant part of this book where the creator Gene is like, I don't know this content. He does manage to make the content still. So it does talk about the members of the team and how like it is really interesting because like this team is set up to go to the California State Championships for their high school division, whatever that's called. I don't even remember. This was only like a week ago. But it talks about how all these kids have different goals when it comes to basketball, or how they don't even want to play professionally. And it's just really interesting to see how there's so much focus for the entire school and like all of these kids to get to this championship game. And then some of them are just like, yeah, I'm going to go study something completely different in college and not play professionally. And it's like, wow. That's not the focus of the book. The focus of the book is basketball. Come on.
Yeah.
But there are also extensive endnotes about Gene's actual experience with this entire story. It was over a year, so he talks about how some conversations or some events, some games were reordered just kind of for dramatic purposes to make it a better book, like in storytelling, in a storytelling way. So there was all like some very intentional decision making, and he points it all out. Like he's very conscientious of the fact that this happened in real life and there were numerous people involved, and yet he kind of had to make it work in a book.
Sure. It's like how Top Gun is based on real life, but they rearranged things so that you didn't really know what conflict they were talking about, right? Right? That's not true. I'm completely making that.
Yes,
Top Gun is not based on real life.
Hold on. Nick, the things he's saying, they're not true.
Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
So this actually worked really well for me because I am also not a sports person, but I like this creator and I want to read all the things on this reading challenge. So the fact that the creator was also not a sports person was right up my alley. I ironically, or maybe coincidentally, July was also our sports comics month on Goodreads, and I actually ended up reading like 2 or 3 different sports books somehow. So it just kind of slotted in there really well.
How great would it have been if throughout this book, where he's talking about how he has to do this book, he gets talked out of doing the book, but the book continues like about his daily life and the things he did after being talked out of writing the book. I want that book.
That would have been exceptionally meta.
Anyway, I decided it was a bad idea. The book continues for like 300 more pages.
Kate, what else did you read?
I just finished at 2 a.m. this morning.
Nice.
Too late.
Nice.
It's the manga classics Count of Monte Cristo. This is based on the book by Alexander Dumas, and the adaptation is by Nakman Poon and Crystal Chan. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's a manga adaptation of the classic story, but it is a brick at 400 pages, and that is shorter than the original book. And I want to say that the manga adaptation is very good. All of these classic manga adaptations have been really good in terms of adapting the story and the art, and anytime that they have to like cut content out to make it a reasonable sized book, they've done a really good job at those decisions. And there are so many characters in this book, and I really wanted to point out that I can tell all of them apart, which is shocking because there are dozens of white men, and I can tell them all apart.
So sorry, I had a question, and you've destroyed me. So the book was good. Sorry, continue. Go ahead.
This was also another book that had a bunch of endnotes in it. They actually, the creator went into some kind of detail about what was cut, and it turns out that not a lot was cut. They kind of went into saying, Alexander Dumas kind of goes off on these digressions that we cut out because it wasn't important to the story. But for the most part, all of the subplots and all of the characters' individual stories are all in there. There is some places where there's just boxes of a little bit of prose just to kind of explain this is what happened kind of off screen, if you will, to keep the story going. But it's not like it's a page of prose or anything. It's just a little bit of narration. It's not unusual in comics, really. It didn't take me out of the story or anything. I do want to comment on the actual story. It's not the manga creator's fault, though. So the actual story of the Count of Monte Cristo is a story of revenge that's centered on one man who I find to be very angry and egotistical. And he literally thinks that his revenge mission is blessed by God. He says that a few times.
Don't we all? Don't we all believe our missions are sent by God? Come on.
This podcast is blessed by
this
God.
podcast.
We're all looking for validation. Some people just aim a little higher.
Yeah.
Spoilers for the end of this very old classic story.
Multi-century spoilers. Yeah, go ahead.
This man ends up in a romantic relationship with a girl that he literally raised since she was 4 years old.
Oh.
Gross. Oh my
maybe
goodness.
Just don't read the last few pages.
Yeah, well, that's why when some people go, Nick, have you read all the classics? I go, not really. Not all of them. And occasionally that gets validated by people who did choose to read the classics. So
yikes.
Valid choice.
Wow.
Actually, speaking of that exact point, story aside, I do love these manga adaptations, and I have so many of these classic books on my to-read list that I just don't get around to in prose because I don't want to. They're long. There are other things I want to read. But when you adapt them to manga, they're so much quicker to read, and then you also have the art side of things to consider. And it just makes it go. It's a more, I don't want to say it's a more pleasant experience. I'm sure that some of these books are great without art, but being a comic reader, they really, I guess, speak to me in a way that sitting down with a 200-year-old book doesn't really interest me necessarily.
Sure.
So I've been making my way through this catalog of manga classics, and I'm going to continue doing that.
Cool. Well, I'm glad for the update, because I remember when you brought these up a while ago, I was like, that sounds like a really cool idea. And then I always go to their website, and I'm intimidated by the number of books that they have.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm glad that you're enjoying these. Maybe I'll check one of these out and finally read a classic piece of fiction.
I just pick them up if I see them at the library. So which book I'm reading is not really my choice.
Okay. Well, before I get into my what I've been reading and stuff like that, I've just been sitting on a joke for a minute that I want to just get out there. Alexander Dumas, more like Alexander Dumbass. You know what I'm saying?
Oh man, he's feeling that in the grave.
They're definitely all high-fiving me through the camera right now.
Yeah.
It's been I'm getting thumbs down. So over the break that we had, I read a lot of comics, a lot of okay comics. Nick and I had a weird
wrote
conversation.
that joke over the break. Mike's been sitting on
the whole month. No, Nick and I were talking about this, how there's just been a lot of just okay comics that have come out, which are kind of disappointing. I don't want to point at any specific book, but I read a couple books that were just a lot of hype on Twitter, a lot of hype in general from people in comics, and they were just bad. So I'm only going to talk about books that were really, really good. First off, I want to talk about Public Domain number 1 and 2. If you haven't had a chance to read this yet, this is the Chip Zdarsky book that he was originally making on his, he is originally making on his Substack. It's being published by Image Comics, which is awesome. I'm kind of late to this, I know, because I didn't get on the Substack train for him. I got on all the other Substack trains, and they've been just okay. I think there's a whole episode out there for Substack stuff to talk about in the future. But Zdarsky's Substack is super cool, and I know everyone who reads it is super cool. But I grabbed it when Image published it. And for a book, you know, that feels like it's retreading a story that many longtime comic fans probably know, the story of like Jack Kirby being screwed over by publishers and by Stan Lee and yada, yada, yada. Zdarsky, I think, takes that idea and spins it to add new depth, new characters, familiar relationships, and his exact brand of humor to the book. So, like, if you liked the humor that Zdarsky writes, I think into all of his books, if you like some of the kind of dorky stuff that he did in Sex Criminals that wasn't sex jokes, I think you'll really like this book. There's so much heart and intelligence in this story. Like, I gave up trying to draw parallels to real world counterparts after a few pages, because while they're there, to start things off, like if you know the story of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and you just know how Jack Kirby's life kind of turned out with all of the publishers and other people just kind of screwing him over the years in some ways, you'll understand where this story's coming from. But that was only used as like a really simple foundation to get this story going. And I think where the first 2 issues go are amazing. If you've read further, I'm sure that there's even more changes and more interesting stuff that happens. But I really, really appreciated just how smart this whole book feels and how just really full of heart it is. Like, this book is so heartfelt. It's such a story about the love of comics and creation of comics. I'm really excited to see where it goes. So yeah, I think if you haven't gotten your hands on these first couple of issues, wait for the first collection or of many collections. I actually don't know how much more about this book other than it's coming out, but it's really good. I really enjoyed this first 2 issues. The other book I want to talk about really quick is The Con Artist by Luke Healy. I grabbed this at Forbidden Planet a few weeks ago because it was just like on a shelf. It's bright orange. It's really, really hard to miss. And I thought it was a cool looking book. I love the simple line work style that they showed on the cover. If you like someone like Box Brown, I think you'll really enjoy the art style of this book. But this book is about traversing the world of tough friendships, anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, making bad choices, and holding yourself accountable, which is my favorite kind of comic because it makes me feel bad about myself, and that's exactly what I want. For like 150
this
pages,
sounds
though.
Like, yeah, true escapism here. Yeah, go on.
Well, you know, for a book that's like 150 pages, like, it really manages to accomplish so much without feeling rushed or hollow. We really understand the main character. We really understand his relationship with his friend. Like, it's a story about a guy and his friend. His buddy ends up getting hit by a bus, and so he has to go help him. And through that, their relationship, you can feel this tension, this long time relationship that they've had, just being stretched even thinner than it already was. You know, and as someone who's in his like early 30s, this book felt disgustingly relatable. So I don't know if it's really going to be for everybody, but I really, really loved it, just because the things that Healy, I think, manages to tap into in this book are very tough to really define to anybody. This idea of you need to have confidence to do something. Like, the main character is a stand-up comedian. That takes a lot of confidence, but at the same time, he has a lot of anxiety and social like anxiety and worries and all the types of things that I think a lot of people just run through their heads about, like, is this person my friend? Are they just putting up a front? How do I actually know this person? Like, things that I think we've all run into at some point in our lives. But I think this book really nails all of those feelings, and also how to deal with those feelings, and how we need to just press on with life, despite our own anxieties and insecurities. So I really, really love this. And I want to say shout out to anybody who saw my mini review on our TikTok. We're plugging TikTok a lot today. We've been trying to put a lot of effort into it, but yeah, really, really good book. Highly recommend it if you're looking for an interesting graphic novel. It's a little pricey. It's from Drawn and Quarterly, but it's a super high quality book. The last thing I'll say here, honorable mentions. I read Crazy Food Truck Volume 1. It's a manga. It's bonkers. It's stupid. It's pretty enjoyable, even if it is a little pervy at times. I read X-Force Volume 1, aka the prequel volume, the first of 2 prequel volumes to X-Statix by Peter Milligan and Mike Allred. I'm finally reading this series, but boy, is it wordy. That first volume, though, is perfect. It's a wonderful story about the stupidity of the X-Men at the time. And my favorite part about that whole volume was the letters in the back of the book, where people are writing in pissed off, one, that they hate Mike Allred's art, and two, this was a time. And also there are people screaming about how unbelievable it would be to have multiple gay people on an X-Men team. And to which Peter Milligan and his editors are just like, hey, guess what? Fuck you. It's awesome. I love it. It turns out that comic book readers have always been bigoted fuckheads for many years. This book came out in like 2001, so it's really interesting. I've been enjoying reading it. It's just very wordy. It like puts me to sleep given how wordy some of the issues have been. But I think what Milligan and the creative team were trying to do with that book is pretty ambitious, and it's really in your face for a book that's came out from Marvel. But this is pre-acquisition when Marvel had the potential to actually say something interesting versus now where everything has to be safe. So that's my hot take of this week. Finally, I want to talk about Saga number 60. All I want to say is I hate Brian K. Vaughan. I hate Fiona Staples. I can't believe I cried over a single issue of a comic book like this. What an issue. What a way to end their first arc back. Saga. Anyways, let's talk about comic books that are coming out every week on I Read Comic Books. We're talking about comic books that are on the top of our pile, whether they're new or old or something that you've just been meaning to read or want to read in the near future. That's the top of our pile. So to get things started, Nick, tell us what's on the top of your pile.
So for me, it's got to be Survival Street number 1. This is written by James Asmus and Jim Festante. Art by Abile Kusinayoff. Colors by Ellie Wright. Letters by Taylor Esposito. You can currently read the number 0 issue for free at a link on CBR exclusively, which will be posted in the show notes. Some of us might be familiar with James Asmus. He wrote he had a pretty long run on Gambit in 2012. He wrote several arcs of Thief of Thieves. And Jim Festante, who wrote The End Times of Bram and Ben and co-wrote the Comixology original Field Trippin' with Asmus. This book is, quote, an unrepentant action satire tearing through a dystopia packed with economic and humanistic cautionary tales. And to put it short, it's basically, what if the Muppets or the puppets, I don't know if we have Muppets trademarked and I need to be careful, from Sesame Street were real, and basically after corporations take over America and the country is deregulated, public broadcasting gets shut down, and like a bunch of the like Muppets that are real from public broadcasting come together to become like this group of mercenaries in a post-apocalyptic society to like say the letter of the day is A and I'm gonna kick your ass or things like that. And I think at one point they threaten like one of the bad guys who's trying to harm these kids, and they're like, when I'm done with you, it'll be my or something like that, because of that's how work. Zander, maybe you'll have to censor that out. I don't know. So yeah, I read the 0 issue. It looks pretty funny. Basically, Grover is like Super Grover appears to be like the leader of the group, and there's like a Big Bird analog and a Oscar the Grouch, because how could you not?
Right.
And yeah, it looks fun. Asmus certainly is inclined to write humorous stuff. Certainly has. He's worked on Rick and Morty as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Asmus did the run that made me believe that Rick and Morty could be funny again after the previous arc, which was absolute garbage that I couldn't finish. So yeah, the guy's got some chops on his. And I'm not even going to tap into the Gambit bit. I know he wrote a great Gambit run, but he also has written other books that are super solid.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I just threw that one in there for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks funny. I mean, post-apocalyptic material these days feels like the zombie of like 2012 or so, and I feel like we've mined it for all it's worth. But still, I think as someone who deeply grew up on PBS, I think my parents jerry-rigged the television to not literally render any other channels. The idea of these characters like being subversive and like kicking people's asses, that just seems great to me.
Okay, well, I'll give this a try. I looked at the cover for this and it's pretty insane, so I'm on board.
Yeah, go read the 0 issue. It's like 10 or 12 pages. It gives you a pretty good idea of what you're getting into.
For sure.
Yeah.
Kate, what about you? What's on the top of your pile?
got a couple of things. One of them is Darryl Openworld, which is releasing this week. This is by the original book is by Oliver Peru, and then the adaptation is by Remy Guerin. And the story is this follows the story of a journalist who can travel between realities and investigates the disappearance of a giant. The word giant is capitalized in the description that I found, so I don't know if this is a creature or a person or like a corporation. Unclear. Okay. But this book is definitely steampunk. I really like the cover of it, and it's based on a young adult series by Oliver Peru, who's a French author. And I can't find any previews on this book. Like I can't find any of the interior art or the first few pages or anything. But it looks beautiful. I like the premise of it, so I think I'm gonna have to track this down. It is the only book listed under this publisher for the week, and it's a publisher I haven't heard of. I think it was Magnetic Press. So maybe this is maybe this was like a Kickstarter or something. I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna find out.
Magnetic Press has done a lot of like French adaptations. Like they do a lot of interesting, like I bought the Aster of Pan book, right? I think that was in the reading challenge. That was a Kickstarter. That was a French book that they translated over to English. They also do the Ogre Gods. They've done a couple of other books by like some pretty heavy hitter French artists. Cool. So yeah, you're probably right. This is just like an adaptation for English from a French book that already exists. So that means it's one, going to be gorgeous, and two, it's going to be like very convoluted.
French book, got it.
Yeah.
No, that really
it just
cool,
comes with a free cigarette taped to the inside of the front cover.
Yeah.
Well, that does sound up my alley. I do like translated
cigarettes.
Books.
Yes.
Cigarettes.
I was like, okay.
I like adaptations and translated books, even if they get kind of weird. So I do not like cigarettes.
I mean, we've made it pretty clear several times on this show that smoking does look really cool. So I mean, if that's worn off on you and I've done my job, I'll be collecting my check from Marlboro tomorrow.
Yeah, Philip Morris is sending you a check and a Ferrari in the mail. Otherwise, Kate, what else are you reading?
I am looking forward to reading Lore Olympus Volume 2 by Rachel Smith. This is based on the webcomic. The artwork is gorgeous. It's all pink and blue. Yeah. I was familiar with the art from just reposts online before I even knew that it came from a comic, which is, incredible. Like the fact that there's just enough art in this book to not have word bubbles in every single panel for me to not know that it was from a comic for a few years. A lot of art, very gorgeous. If you're not familiar, somehow, this is a story about Persephone and Hades' love story. It's been kind of modernized, I think. Like it's not all like ancient Greece or old. It's not just old. And my husband Brian, who's also on the show, was nice enough to buy this beautiful hardcover version of this for me shortly after it came out a couple of weeks ago, and I just haven't gotten around to reading it somehow. It's in a pile of other gorgeous hardcover comics I also haven't read that Brian bought half of for me.
Yeah.
If you haven't read this book and you are interested in starting from Volume 1, I do want to say that there is a sexual assault at the end of Volume 1 that I was not prepared for. So just heads up.
Same. Yeah, Kelly's been reading this book or reading this webcomic, right? Because she reads in the Webtoons app where you can read all of it, right? If you don't want to get the collected edition. So which is interesting because like Webtoons adapted for collections is very like a whole thing like I could talk about for hours. But yeah, this book is fantastic, and I did not see that scene coming at all. And not that it's out of the blue, but like I didn't think this book was going to get that dark.
Yeah, same.
It's like, oh shit.
Based on the art online, I was like, oh, this is a wholesome comic about a love story, and that's it. Nope.
Yeah. I mean, that's not just it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it is about them. Anyways, Lore Olympus is great. You should all read it. It's beautiful, and it's a fantastic story. I totally agree with that. For me, I'm sorry to totally steal your light on that, Kate, but I had to chime in. I love that book. For me, though, I guess before I get into my picks, I want to shout out some of the folks hanging out with us on Discord today. Danny is reading Sword of Azrael, Dark Knight of the Soul #1, and Sword of Azrael #1, because Danny thinks he can come and join IRCB and then just start throwing 2, 3, 4, 5 Discord picks out on there. I don't appreciate it at all. But that's what Danny's going to be reading. And then Kev is looking forward to reading Public Domain #2. funny enough, that is also my pick for this week. Or it was going to be my pick for this week, and then I saw Kev picked it, and I changed my mind because I already read number 2. I saw number 2 in the list. Just ignore me, all right? I'm reading Aquaman Andromeda number 2. Sorry, I haven't podcasted in a while. This is all brand new to me again. Aquaman Andromeda number 2. This is by Ram V and Christian Ward. The cover for this book is Black Manta with a laser sword. Definitely not a lightsaber. It's 100% definitely not a lightsaber at all, because I think DC might get into some trouble if they start using laser swords on their covers. No, it's definitely a sword that has a red light on it or something. I think Black Manta got really into like those LED strips, and so he just plugged one into the side of his sword that he's got. But the thing that makes me so excited about this book is Ram V. He's an incredible writer. He's crafted a story that mixes reality with extreme metaphors about the quote-unquote void, the infinite darkness. Like, it's very much the kind of story that I am absolutely drawn to, like these humongous, unbelievably large things that are just all-encompassing and all-consuming. I love that kind of stuff. And I think Ram V has managed to tell that story without digging too deep into like your stereotypical tropey Lovecraftian feels that I think a lot of people would immediately associate with the story about the quote unquote deep of the ocean. And, you know, Ram V has a reputation for me delivering consistently super well, high concept stuff. See also The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. So I have both a high bar and high expectations for this series. But either way, this book has a lot of promise. Christian Ward's art is stunning. It's some of his best work to date. I think if you like some of the stuff that he did on Odyssey back with Matt Fraction way back in the day, this is very similar in terms of the wild stuff. When you get these insane page layouts and these insane 2-page spreads, you haven't seen anything like this, and I think he's topping himself every issue. I'm super excited to see what this second issue is going to bring, as if I know what it's going to be. I know that it's going to top last issue, and last issue had probably one of the coolest panels in a comic book I've ever seen, so I'm super excited for what's coming next. This book is absolutely gorgeous, guys. I just can't get over it. Anyways, I'm gonna before I expound any further on this, we're gonna take a quick break. I think when we come back, we're gonna be talking about logos in comics, comic book logo designers. There's so many links and images in our notes doc this week. I don't know how I'm gonna get it over to the Patreon for those folks, but either way, we're gonna talk about that, and we'll be back in just a second. This week on I Read Comic Books, we are talking about comic book logos, those wonderful things that you see at the top of a comic or on the side of a volume, or, you know, in the middle of a comic sometimes. Those things that stand out and make you go, I know that I'm reading this book because it's designed very well. And we're probably also going to talk a little bit about publisher logos because that's also important. But to get things started, I guess I wanted to talk about the X-Men logo created by Tom Muller, because of course I want to, because that's what we're here for. I'm here for every week, is to find some reason to jam X-Men into the conversation here on this podcast. But Tom Muller's X-Men logo was an extreme departure from, I think, any of the previous logos that we saw. And I think the thing that made it super unique is that it was applicable to all of the books in the X-Men line. It had this weird symmetry that allowed you to do like flips and turns, and you could tell what it was, following all of those things that make logos really, really interesting. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what makes a good logo in a comic book as far as Nick and Kait are concerned, because I have some thoughts as well, but I'm curious to know what the two of you think about things like this. And I'm just starting with that X-Men logo by Tom Muller. Do you think this is an effective logo, and I guess why? Nick, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that basically X-Men readers and fans have been sort of inundated with Muller's designs. I want to say, what did that basically go hand in hand with Hickman? I think with Hickman,
when we did the House of X Powers of 10 rebrand, we got this brand new X-Men logo.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm sure Hickman had a hand in that, because it definitely feels part and parcel like his graphic design inclinations. Yeah, it was funny when a lot of X-Men people were like, man, I don't know about this. And I was like, I've seen this logo for years, because Tom Muller basically his Snowfall logo and his Snowfall graphic design elements, like, and especially for that book, because obviously it was based on like, you know, geometric patterns and snowflakes. I was like he did this like 6 years ago, for Snowfall. And to be fair, like I liked that. I enjoyed that. I like his aesthetic with like geometric patterns, his obsession with like diamonds and hard edges. I really like it. I think it's I think it looks great, and the way that they've been like sort of redesigning. I know there was like a Comixology sale a couple weeks ago with like volumes of the most recent big X-Men saga, and I could see that they were like redesigning using his trade dress elements for the trade volumes, and those looked great too. I mean, it's an attractive looking design for me. Maybe it'll wear off at some point, but I think it looks great.
Yeah. Kait, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is the logo that is like this kind of geometric X with a white line through it and then a circle around it, right? Okay. Yeah. So I've noticed that that's been really used in branding. I mean, you mentioned like this whole redesign with all the X-Men books. If you posted a very nice link in our notes.
Yeah.
That kind of shows you how they used that same X with the white line through it. And the X-Force logo, the Excalibur logo, New Mutants doesn't have an X in it, but they still use the same kind of geometric font with lines through it. It's like a whole branding choice. And I think that really is recognizable for readers of this book or comics, this whole series. I think is something that is noticeable enough and kind of minimalistic enough at the same time that you're gonna know that it all kind of goes together if it's on your shelf or in the store. It is like this whole family look that is very adaptable, as is, you know, exampled by its adaptability in all of these other titles.
Yeah, I mean, like I also posted a link to this article by Blambot, right? Like if you don't know Nate Picos, aka Blambot on the internet, he is probably one of the most prolific letterers in the comic book industry. He's done a lot to like move comic book lettering forward. He wrote a really nice article about the successful logo design, which I think is funny because this goes far and beyond just comic books, right? This is branding. This is if you have a business. This is if you run a company of any kind. You know, this kind of idea still works really, really well. But he's talking about it specifically when it comes to comic books, and you know, talking about what a logo is and what a logo isn't. And you know, one of the key things he talks about is like, you know, take this logo, if you're designing something, print it out, put it on a wall, and then take a couple steps back and make sure that you can still recognize what that thing is. And I think that's what a lot of these logos that I think we're going to talk about today do really well. You know what these things are when you take a step back from them because they are so definitive and they work so well. Like in our notes doc, I have a ton of images that I pasted in here of just really, really famous logos and different variations over time. And, you know, I'm looking at a lot of X-Men logos because that's the first thing I think of always. And all of them somehow incorporate an X, right? Like whether they're the Tom Muller designs or they're the 90s designs or, you know, things from the 2000s or whatever, they all have this very big, bold feel that a comic book cover typically has. But I think the X-Men in particular hold on to this extremely bold lettering that come from the like Jim Lee era X-Men, where there was this X-Men kind of raised off of the page in big, huge capital letters. And a lot of the other series that came after that and are around that time use a similar style. And I think, again, you take a step back, and if you're pulling the comic book out of its, you know, long box or short box or whatever, what's the first thing you're going to see? It's these logos. You know exactly what you're getting at. And when you do something like what Tom Muller did, where you've branded all of these things, you know, working with the Marvel editorial department, you've branded them all to have a similar lettering, similar style. They all have this big branded X on them. You know that you're looking at an X book. You're not looking at a Spider-Man book. It's not a Batman book. It's not anything else. And I think that's something maybe we as comic book readers don't think about very often, is like how books in a specific line are styled, right? Like, are all the Superman books styled one way? Are all the Batman books styled a different way? Justice League, X-Men, you know, you could look at this and you start to group them all together and you go, oh shit, they all kind of look the same, and they're all styled in a way that I can tell that they are this type of story. And I find that to be super fascinating. And I think the more you look at this, you start to see these patterns, especially when you group them all together. But I've been talking for a while. I guess Nick or Kait, what are your thoughts on logos? Do you have any thoughts? I don't know if you deal with logos at all during your day-to-day or anything like.
Yeah, I work for a book publisher, so I have to place logos on title pages because I do interiors. But yeah, every book gets a logo, so I have to place a lot of logos. So I guess I've developed opinions. Pretty much just what I was saying. If it's recognizable on your shelf between one book and another book, as long as you can tell that like a book comes from the same series or the same publisher, I think something's been done correctly there. It's also worth noting that a lot of these books, you're not gonna frame all of your books. You're not gonna see all of the titles on the wall all the time. So you kind of need a way to shorten the logo to put it on a spine, or it needs to be scalable so that it can be really tiny and still be read. Like with the X-Men books, I don't have one, but I would guess that they have that circled X on the spine. And or even the old X-Men logos. I mean, that's only four characters, so it's going to be scalable. It's going to be noticeable. You're not trying to fit 3 lines of text on a spine. So you're going to be able to know what you're looking at on the shelf, even if the text is tiny. And I think that makes it successful. At least part of what makes it successful. Also with modern design influences and just the way that things have been pointing in the last few decades, things are simple. Like we used to get these logos that had a lot of illustration in them. You've got a Spawn logo in here that has a skull. Your Batman logos have like the entire character behind them. And like those are really cool and interesting on the cover. But that's not something that's going to be able to scale down. That's not it's not efficient, I guess. Like it's very pretty.
Yeah. It's hard to make something that's complex into a mark.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like that. There's that in branding and design. There's this idea of a mark, right? Where like something can just be easily splattered somewhere and you could see it and know what it is immediately. And when you get things that are a bit more complex, it becomes very hard to do that.
Yeah. And with the internet, when you're seeing so many things just in thumbnail sized covers, especially like if you're going to want something that people are going to know when they see it without having to zoom in or make it larger or download it.
Yeah. Nick, what about you? What are some of your thoughts here? I know you got some different books that you wanted to highlight in our notes here, but like, from a high level standpoint, I guess like how do you feel about comic book logos?
Yeah, I mean, Kait kind of got to the heart of one of my concerns, which is like not only sort of scalability, but also how do you like future proof your logo? Like how do you design something? And of course this also gets into like trade dress elements and also just design elements for the whole cover. But like how do you if you've allocated enough space here for the logo and you're going to have the writer and the author up top, like what are you planning on if a book has a co-author, or what are you planning on if there are some extra credits that you want to put on the cover? Like how do you prevent yourself from having to rearrange all of the elements on the page and just start shifting everything into different places? And I think we've all seen, we've all collected some sort of series where maybe volumes 1 through 3 all look uniform and the spine looks uniform, and all of a sudden you get volume 4 and the spine looks completely different and the aesthetics are completely off. And you look at the cover and the trade logo elements and the credit elements are shifted into completely different places. And I mean, if you're, a mild-mannered, non-neurotic individual, maybe you can sigh and say, is this the biggest problem I have today? And if you're me, you go, this is the biggest problem I have today. This is number one. Who do I get on the phone?
Yeah.
So creating logos, creating covers where you can either anticipate what you'll do if those weird little outlier scenarios come up, or if you can design things in such a way where you can prevent those things from coming up, I think is really important. And with some of the stuff I do at work, I am looking interestingly at some of the sorts of things that Kait was talking about. in terms of like looking at some of these art images and vetting them basically. And so I've seen my fair share of stuff that maybe didn't, plan, these things out or whatnot. So yeah.
It's interesting though, because like when we're talking specifically about trade dressing, right? I feel like we're getting really in the weeds. I hope no one is turned off by this discussion, but I find it to be fascinating.
Put on your scuba gear. We're going deep. Yeah.
This is a really interesting thing because, Nick, to your point, Marvel and DC have been atrocious about this for decades now, right? Where you buy, I'm looking just at a run of Exiles, right? I have all 16 volumes of Exiles, right? That's a pretty long series. And while the design is consistent, the size of the different like lettering pieces are all different for whatever reason. I don't know. But it's funny because and this may be a recent thing, but in the like Japanese market, I was following I saw something on TikTok, of course, because that's where I get all my news nowadays. I'm sorry. But I saw someone on TikTok talk about how Hunter x Hunter and One Piece have been published for a really, really long time. And so when they started publishing the company, when they published them in English, Shonen Jump had a different logo, right? It had like a more bubbly, cartoony style because it was like 2000s. And so as those series have continued to come out in English, the Shonen Jump logo has changed. So if you buy newer volumes of things like Kaiju number 8, that's been, 3 volumes out right now, they have a very nice, like square Shonen Jump logo. But those old series, when they publish the newer volumes, they continue to publish with the old logo so that it has a consistent look when you put them all on your shelf, which I think is super cool. It's like this attention to detail that they know that collectors are going to want, whereas it doesn't seem like some of the bigger publishers in the United States necessarily hold true to that. I think Image does better. I think Boom does better, but Marvel and DC, we know, are notoriously bad about just the layout on their spines and stuff like that. Which has to do with the logo, has to do with the text, has to do with a lot of things that come into the design of things. But besides, spines and stuff like that, I guess we can jump into some of our favorite logos if you guys want. And Nick, I'll just kick it back to you because you've got a really big list here. What are some of your favorite logos for comics that you've seen recently?
Yeah, and obviously this is going to be biased, and I think everyone knows that. I think one of the more simple ones I've seen recently that I've appreciated is just when Marvel rebooted. I say rebooted. They didn't have the franchise before. They took it. When Marvel acquired the Aliens franchise, they went ahead and stuck with the classic logo from the first film, from the movie poster. Just the big, blocky, white letters, really largely spaced out one from the next. And they've just made it this, header, basically, on the top of every single issue. It's in the exact same place on every single one, which I really like. I think it helps that this book frequently has like really dark background covers, so they can get away with that. Obviously, I think we've all seen comics where, depending upon the colors within the logo and the colors within the background, they will shift the logo to a different part of the cover so that the logo, pops. So you don't end up with like a white logo on a white background, a black logo on a black background.
Right.
But Alien has always kept it in the exact same position. I like the, consistency of that. I like that they've never shifted the color from the white letters, because that is true to the movie poster. Just, like I said, it's consistent. It's nice that they went with what we know. And I think, not to read into things too much about, how does this really make you feel? Just it demonstrates consumer confidence. I feel like it shows like we understand that we have this franchise, that it's a serious thing. We're taking it seriously. We're gonna, stick to our roots. We're not gonna turn it into some weird, flashy, wild logo. Like, we understand that we are handling this property and like we respect it. And
yeah.
it's interesting because like sometimes you see that with franchise books where they try to really remain close to the source material, and other books are like, we're just going to do whatever we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm.
When you have a logo like this, it sort of says to a reader or a casual observer, like, this is what you're looking for. Like this is the alien, right? I mean,
yeah.
For better or for worse, when you have a title called Alien, let me tell you, when you're trying to Google stuff about Alien, it becomes a real difficulty. So, like, what do you do to make people know, like, this is that alien? Well, if you use that logo, then people know. Of course, if you also have a xenomorph on the cover, I think that kind of takes the guesswork out of it too. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's me like reading 7 levels deep into that. But I really love that one. One other one I'll just briefly mention, and I think you brought it up as well, is just the Hellboy logo. It's got to be one of the best. I mean,
oh yeah,
Comics Alliance, I saw it on an article yesterday, they called it the best. Now, I don't know about that. I'd have to think about it. But the Hellboy logo is just great. It's so good. Instantly identifiable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have shifted the colors of it from time to time. I think it originally was black and red, but it has shifted from book to book. Such a great logo. When the movies came out, they even chose to keep that logo, which respect.
Yeah. I mean, this was originally done by Kevin Nolan, right? Like this is who's an artist, like who has done a bunch of other things, but like to me, I mean, this is probably his most notable work, right?
Well, I posted a link, and I'm sure it'll be in the show notes as well, that like I think he also created probably the most identifiable Doctor Strange logo, and also one of the better known Punisher logos as well. But like, I know nothing about Doctor Strange, but when I saw that, I was like, I think this is the one that everybody wants to use like forever. So I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, that Doctor Strange logo, like when I think of Doctor Strange, that is the logo that I think of it, which is for those of you, obviously we're talking about a visual thing here on an audio medium. We appreciate your patience. We'll post links, but I love that the Doctor Strange logo, and this is similar to the Hellboy logo, it is just stylized letters, but they are stylized in such a way that they go beyond just being a typeface.
It's evocative,
Yeah, you couldn't take Doctor Strange as it is in these logos or these letters and turn it into a font that you could type with. It just wouldn't work. And I think, again, to go back to that Nate Pico's article on Blambot, which will be in the show notes, one of the things that he points out is that a logo is not just a font that you've stylized. It needs to be identifiable in a way that goes beyond just the font itself. And I think that is absolutely true when you look at both of these logos, all 3 of these logos in this picture here for the Punisher, Hellboy, and Doctor Strange. They are so much more than just the letters themselves. It's the composition. It's the way different elements overlap and run into each other. The type of thing that, again, if you turn this into just like a font that you could type with or print out, it would not work the same. I think we see this all over the internet, I think, when it comes to lettering. Like things like the Grand Theft Auto font, right? or Star Wars font, people recreate those and you can reuse them for things. Like we reused a Star Wars clone font for the I Read Star Wars comic books podcast that we did, right? That's what I did for all the covers on that. Danny in the chat has pointed out the Sopranos logo. It's the exact same kind of thing. Like those fonts are reusable, but Hellboy is not. Doctor Strange is not. The Punisher is not. And I think that's what really differentiates these from just regular fonts. And I really want to make sure that's called out because that difference is subtle, but it is significant.
Yeah, and it's also about creating a logo, even if it's just letters, which in these cases it is just letters, that somehow feels tonally consistent with the subject matter.
Yeah.
In a way that is frequently very difficult to enunciate. You just feel it, but you feel it nonetheless.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is true to this character, or this is true to this take on that character. Or if you're a creator, who's presenting a new take on a character, you can use your logo as a way to say, like, yes, you might know Superman, but we're going to create a logo that's evocative of like, oh, this is this kind of a take on Superman. Like maybe the letters are weathered or they're like broken or whatever. So yeah, this is now about, how do letters make you feel? Right.
I mean,
and how poorly can you try to explain that to someone?
No, But I do appreciate you bringing that up, because I'm looking at like the cover for Superman Son of Kal-El, right, which is a different character, but it is still like the core Superman book, I think, at this point. I'm waiting for DC fanboys to come at me because I only read like 4 books, but Danny's giving me a thumbs up. Superman versus Superman Son of Kal-El, like the difference in those logos, I think from the previous Superman book that was coming out in like 2020 maybe, the font in the way that those books are lettered and laid out on their cover, they're significant enough that you know that you're getting a different story, but you know who that character is because you're obviously, reading the title. It says Superman, but you know that feel is going to be slightly different based on how the style has changed for that logo. Like I think when we look at different Batman books, different X-Men books, right? Like the logos all feel the same in some ways, but I think especially when we're talking about pre-Tom Muller X-Men books, you knew that they were in the same family, but the style in which the logo itself was designed is giving you different feelings. I think you get that with Batman, you get that with Justice League, especially when you're looking at Justice League Dark versus Justice League or Justice Society of America or Justice League of America. They're all going to be slightly different to let you know that they still are inside this Justice League brand, but they're giving you different vibes based off of the team composition and stuff like that. And I think it takes a subtle, like very deft hand to be able to design something like that so that you know that you're getting something different, but it is in the same style and family. I feel like I've said this on an episode before years and years ago, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. But yeah. Kait, we haven't heard from you in a minute. I know you've got a whole thing about logos from publishers that I do want to talk about. So what are some of your thoughts, from that publishing side of things?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of where my mind went when we decided to talk about logos for this topic. And you guys have been really great in talking about actual like characters and series. And then I'm over here like, I work for a publisher. I got to talk about publishers.
Please.
So the kind of, I don't want to call it a newer publisher. They've been around for a little while now, but when Black Mask came on the scene, I was really impressed with their logo just immediately. Yeah. Their logo, it says it's in black, and it says Black Mask across the top of this black mask. It's basically the B turned on its side that is under the text, but it looks like a superhero mask.
I've been looking at this logo for years, and I never realized that was a B on its side. What a
Yeah, exactly. I love the like kind of multi-use logos where it's
oh yeah,
it means something and also represents something more than just the word or just a picture. And this is an example of exactly the kind of logo that I like. If you read books from Black Mask, you're gonna know what their logo looks like, whether it's the B, the mask, or it's the entire logo with the text on top of it. Like it's just instantly recognizable, to me at least, having seen it before. And just I wrote in the notes 10-10 concept, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, totally. And before we dive too much deeper into that, I know we're already like 3/4 of the way through the show, but I'm sorry to any designers at home. You know all of this stuff, but please bear with us. Send us your thoughts and feedback, ircbpodcast@gmail.com. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, next week we're gonna do serif fonts and sans serif fonts. We're just gonna lean into this so fucking hard.
Yeah, I'm gonna have so many opinions.
Yeah. He's coming back every week from now on as we go into every design element that goes into comic books.
I also wanted to talk about the first second logo. This is another one that I know instantly, on the spine or on the cover or in a thumbnail, anything. I think it's very recognizable and it's to the point.
Yeah.
And again, it's a little logo, which is a colon and 01, and then the words first second under it. And the 01 means first second, like you're writing down time. And I think that it's wonderful. And then I also, having stared at this logo for a while in the notes document, realized that it actually gets larger from left to right as if it were growing. And most of their books are coming of age stories about kids who are growing up. Just all right. Wonderful.
All right. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. That's good.
No logo is that clever. Okay, Kait.
Yeah. No one's that smart. No.
But I did want to mention that the text under it, instead of just being this nice kind of straightforward sans serif text like Black Mask has, is instead like this kind of kind of inked handwriting, the words for a second, and I just don't think that it goes with their simple kind of vector graphic 0-1
angular
logo.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work together. And I kind of see where they got the influence. Like, these are a lot of kids books, and it kind of looks like something kind of childish in a nice way.
Sure.
But I don't know, for being branding, like, it would work if it was the title of a series, but for being their branding, I don't think that the actual text font works very well. But otherwise, I like the logo.
It feels slapdash, but it also, like, I think that's kind of part of it, is that, like, a clock is ticked forward 1 second and you're writing for, I don't know, whatever. Let's get someone on the phone about
anyway,
this.
It's shit. I'm glad we decided that. I'm glad that's where we settled. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And then I only wanted to talk about one more that I really like, because the other notes that I have are things that I don't like.
Yeah. That's where I want to go next.
Okay.
So good.
Okay. I didn't think Kait was going to be the negative one this week, but here we are.
It wouldn't surprise you to hear that it's the big two that I don't like.
Oh, all right. Okay, well, let's hear.
Kate's trying to make friends here. Clearly, let's
hear this good one, and then we'll go into the bad ones.
We'll go into damage control.
The one that I like, or maybe it's more that I've gotten used to it, maybe, is the image logo, and I like it for a couple of reasons. So first of all, it's this giant black eye with this kind of nice shaping toward the top of the stem of the eye.
The letter I, yes.
Yeah, and then the word image kind of fits down at the bottom center of it. And you can have either one of these things. You could have the word image or just the eye, and I think that it's recognizable. But then you put them both together, and it's like, yep, I know exactly what this is and who made it.
Yeah.
And then, like, they also have these anniversary versions of their logo where they've put the number 20 or 30 right on top of it, and it's just an extra information, like branding, celebration, that just works really well with the simple, straightforward, sans serif, black and white. I feel like I'm repeating myself.
No, but it nails it, right? It's simple, it's easy to understand, it's easily recognizable, it's a perfect mark. You put that anywhere, and someone's going to know this is an image book, right? Like, I had a shirt on the other day, like the I Believe in Comic Books thing, and it's just got the, like, a splash of color with the eye inside of it. Everyone knows that that's image, right? If you're a comic fan, you've seen this logo before. Totally.
I especially like this one because with a lot of logos that are long, you kind of have to turn them to put them on the spine of your book, and with this tall vertical eye, you don't have to turn it just works.
Yeah, it works really great on the covers too, right? Like, for most standard layout covers where you've got the title at the top and you've got, like, the price and everything in the upper left hand corner, like, it works perfectly to just kind of throw it up there. You know exactly where it's from, you get the publisher, you get the comic title, and you get your art beneath it. It's a really smart logo. But let's I guess before we get into what's bad about logos, I guess, Nick, or before I give Nick another chance, I do want to talk about, like, one other logo that I really like, and that's the Stephanie Hans, like, die logo, which is pretty complex, right? Like, if you look at the die logo itself, it's a big unfolded 20-sided die that has, like, the letters D-I-E kind of broken out in, like, weird ways that I think you could easily misread. Totally.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's an unfolded D20. I think it's really cool. I don't think that it's, like, super recognizable unless you put it on a whole cover, right? Like, if I just saw an unfolded D20, I don't think I would know that it's from this book. But I think the design of it for each of the covers for the series die is gorgeous. It's perfect. I think Stephanie did a great job of dealing with, like, the game side of the story as well as the design side of the story, kind of leaning into making things look beautiful and broken and fragmented, which, taps into everything that makes that comic good. I think if you just threw up, like, a logo like this, nobody would know what it is. But that kind of goes for a lot of independent stuff, right? Like, are you going to know what this is unless you've seen it before? But I do love just how they decided to do that. And if I remember correctly, in the first couple of issues of Die, they broke down how they played around with some of the layouts for this. And I just love the overall look of this. Like if you look for any die cover, you'll see this. And I think it's really smart. Plus, they did that thing where since there was only so many number of issues in the series, they could put the number of that issue in its spot on the unfolded D20, which I think is really clever. So it works from like a design level. It's really, really cool. Maybe less recognizable, but I think like from a like if you start to think about it level, it's pretty cool. So that's the only other one that I really wanted to bring up.
I did not notice that their numbers were in the right spot, but I did notice that the letters move around each issue, like just to adapt to the artwork that's under it. And I always thought that worked really well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really cool. It's like a really cool idea for a cover concept. It's maybe less of a logo than it is a cover concept.
Branding,
but like this all, it's branding. It all kind of flows together, right? These logos kind of become brands, become cover layouts. It's pretty complicated, and I love it. I love it so much. But anyways, Nick, what's one more that you really dug, and then we'll get into what Kait hates about comic books.
Yeah. I think one of the ones for me that I really appreciate is the TMNT logo for the IDW 2012 reboot. Where especially it's kind of funny on the first volume where it's called Change is Constant, and then here you have this logo that is clearly meant, and I didn't go look, but I'm pretty certain it is borderline identical to the, and maybe like a slightly modernized, but identical to the original logo from Eastman and Laird's original run. And I can't prove this, which I guess brings up another point, which is, gosh, it sure would be nice if books would credit their logo artists in the credits. Some books have a designer, but the designer doesn't always do the logo. I mean, I think like someone like I think like Ryan Hughes, I think also Tom Muller frequently takes on both design and logo duties, but it's not always the same person, and so you don't know for sure. I feel like Eastman did this logo. I mean, the guy was co-plotting the book and doing covers and shit like that. So why would they go hire someone else just to copy Eastman? But it's clearly Eastman's lettering. It's like rough. It's scrappy. It feels very like hand drawn. It's got his sort of angular lettering style to it. The J in Ninja is like offset. It just, and then like I said, it's just kind of funny when you look at the first volume where it's called Change is Constant, and that's being written in a font that clearly echoes Eastman's work from like 30 years before. So I don't know if they thought about that much, but the juxtaposition there I found kind of amusing. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah. Of course, as we're sitting here, I was trying to Google like who the logo designer was, and I came across this website that allows you to generate like an old 90s style TMNT title. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in like the green font. It's amazing. I'm going to post a link to that in the Discord. It'll be in the show notes as well. It's really, really fun.
I also came across that when I was desperately flailing to try to figure out who created this logo.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, when you look at a logo, and maybe this is like my hot take, I think a logo is almost even more important than a cover in terms of getting a feel or a tone for the book, because the cover image is going to change from month to month. It might not even be the same artist, but assuming you're not like a wild and crazy book like, I don't know, the most recent Image anthology, which I think has a different logo every single time. Your logo is consistent. And so it has to be the consistent representative on your book for tone and aesthetic and feeling. And for me with this TMNT logo, like it was like, what are you getting out of this TMNT take? As there have been so many different takes over decades. And when you have this logo that's clearly Eastman's lettering and it echoes that old feel, like it sort of tells you like, this is the kind of take we're doing. It's going to be, it's going to be weird, and it's going to feel like much more like homemade and not like curated with all of the rough edges sanded off and everything. It's going to echo back to Eastman's run. And again, that's like sort of the power of a logo, is you can look at something like this, which are literally, it's just, it's letters in a typeface, and you're like, okay, I get where this is going to go. I don't know.
I totally agree with what you're saying, because it definitely feels like you can convey so much with these logos. Like I feel like every time you look up, I think we take a lot of this for granted as readers, but you can get the entire feel of a book, or you should be able to get the entire feel of a book from those logos. I think maybe some indie creators don't necessarily understand that. I think sometimes they miss the mark. They get a really cool logo, but it doesn't actually reflect the comic. And really successful creators will actually get the right logo for their book, and I think it totally pays off. Like I think of books like the OZ, right? That was that book that came out from our friend whose name I'm blanking on right now. But that book, it's got the OZ. You know that it's about Wizard of Oz because the Oz is like the title of the book. But it's this gritty, like stamped metal, and you know that it's going to be more action, more war, more crazy stuff than you would expect from the Wizard of Oz. So like I love that kind of stuff. But anyways, we could talk more about comic book stuff. Or comic book logos all day. But I do want to hear Kait's like actual complaints about Marvel and DC. So let's get some takes in before we wrap up the episode.
Yeah. So
thank you, Danny. David Pepos, that's our friend who did the OZ. But Kait, go ahead.
I noticed that I didn't like the Marvel logo a long time ago when I was trying to collect the original Runaways print, like digest-sized books. And I collected them in that version because that was almost the first comic that I really read to like appreciate comics and get into comics. And I couldn't find the books with the same logo on the spine, which is a problem that you've already mentioned, Nick, I think. But also just the Marvel logo is kind of heavy-handed. Like it's just the word Marvel kind of all run together with no tracking between the letters. And it's red and white. And it's like they made the decision that they were Marvel and they didn't have to be subtle.
It's not just the spine, it's also like anywhere else that it's printed. Like DC at least tries to put a little circle, everywhere else. Vertigo is just text, but like I'm just looking at my bookshelf right now and I'm like, a lot of other people try to do more than just have text.
And it kind of screams at you. I mean, having a logo that's not just black and white is kind of nice. I mean, like I feel like a lot of the logos I like are just black and white, but it just screams at you from whatever you're looking at. Like if it's on a spine, it's sometimes the only red thing on the spine, so you're going to notice it, or from the cover, or if it's on anything, merchandising for any of their properties, it's just loud.
Okay,
like, they don't have to be subtle because they're Marvel and they know it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
They should just change it from Marvel and just keep it in that font and just put "It's us."
Yeah,
and just
you know who it is.
It's us.
You know who it is.
It is recognizable. I'll give them that. Like, could not mistake it for anyone else. And then the DC logo, they've at least like changed up their logo a little more often than Marvel. I like that they're willing to adapt and change, and they've had that consistent DC. It's small and more subtle at least. But looking at, I found this document with all of the different historical Marvel logos in it, and I don't like any single one of them.
Yeah, well, DC. Here's the thing: like the DC logos, I think, and the DC logo has changed quite a bit, and to the point almost to their detriment, right? Like they've changed it in such a way that, like, one of the examples in here, I remember seeing this because DC, when I used to work at Comixology, DC changed their logo like split second and didn't tell anybody, and like it was a problem because we had to fix something on their comic sales website, and I remember it being such a hassle because nobody in the office liked the new logo. And then I got this whole like talking to from a product manager about like the history of DC's logo, and I remember digging into this, and the one that just totally rubs me the wrong way is the one that's just a big old Superman jumping out of the words DC Superman. Like they were so obsessed with promoting Superman as a character in the like 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. It's insane. And then eventually, they had other stuff. But I just thought it's so funny that one with Superman just like flying out of the letters is so stupid to me. But anyway, sorry, not to steal the whole thing. I remember that so vividly being dumb.
Yeah, like they're a whole company that has different comics, and yet they're kind of throwing all of their eggs in one basket, including in their branding. I get it. But yeah, like all of everything is just they've added things, they've taken away things. They've got stars in some of them. There are 2 circles in other ones. They do seem to have moved toward this like kind of blue and white logo, almost like as a response to Marvel's red and white logo. It's like they want to pop out and be different on a shelf. But I don't know, all of them, when I look at especially the last like 3 logos, they just all look like sports teams and not books to me. Like there's just something, I don't know, more
well,
like
I mean, sports teams works because they do want you to pick a side and they expect you to root for them unrepentantly. So that seems fair.
It just seems like something that I would see on a billboard above like a basketball team instead of on a shelf in a comic shop for some reason, and I couldn't really pinpoint why. But especially the not the most recent logo, but there was one that was like it has this big swoop around it with a star on it. Like that's a basketball team.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the problem is that they went from that, which is a pretty recognizable, good-looking logo, in my opinion, to the peel-off DC thing, which I never understood.
I don't get that one. It doesn't look like...
I forgot about that.
2012 was a hard year for DC fans, I think, because they were doing the New 52. They decided to create this new logo that just looks like garbage. And then they moved to the old, like this newer, modern-looking DC logo, which is the one that we see now that just looks like a stamp, and it looks like someone didn't finish the lettering pass, and there's all these weird cuts and marks, and nothing's consistent. But at least it's less complicated than the DC tear-off piece of paper thing that looks unfinished in someone's draft that they published. So I don't know.
They got away from the gradient treatment.
I also don't care for these logos either, Kate. So I'm right there with you.
I just like the subtlety of independent publishers and the creativity that we're seeing in those, as opposed to this kind of more direct, large, I don't know, these big 2 publishers.
Yeah.
This competition that's happening.
Well, I guess before we go any further and any longer, I know this is a very long episode, so I apologize in advance to everyone at home. Not really, but apologize to our editor, Zander. We're going to wrap things up here. I appreciate the commentary. Check out our notes on Patreon. If you're a subscriber, you can check those out. But next week's episode, I'm not going to be here because I'm going to Gen Con. We're going to see what happens. But Danny is going to be his first official episode on the show, and Kate will be talking about animals in comics. And I guess Paul's not on the episode. I forgot. Kara's going to be on the episode next week instead of Paul because Paul's out. But Kara, Danny, and Kate are going to be talking about animals. The title I put on the show is going to be This Is Not a Furry Podcast. I promise. Our favorite animals or anthropomorphized characters in comics. It's going to be a great time. Check that out. Make sure you tune in live on Discord. And as always, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow Nick at Death Star Plans. You can follow Kate at Kate Elfier. You can follow me at Mike Rapin. And you can follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at IRCB Podcast. So go check out our TikTok. It's really, really fun. Renee and everybody's having a great time submitting small little videos, and it's been a blast.
This episode first aired on Patreon and is possible because of our wonderful patrons. Join today for exclusive series like IRCB Movie Club, Saga of Saga, and more. Join now at patreon.com/IRCB podcast.
If you haven't already, please rate and review our show 5 stars on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, which does have ratings, or wherever you listen to podcasts, because you know that we deserve it.
Join the IRCB Discord community to chat comics and more. Plus, you can listen to our episodes live as we record every week. Check the link to our Discord in the show notes.
Podcasts grow best when spread by word of mouth, so why not tell your friends, family, and local comic shop about IRCB?
I was just telling people about the show yesterday because I was wearing a Department of Truth t-shirt, and I was like, I can't tell you more about this comic. You have to listen to my podcast. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. They have a brand new orchestral version of a lot of their songs that's coming out very soon. Make sure you go check that out at their Bandcamp or on their website, infinityshred.com. Zander is a very cool guy who we all appreciate. We appreciate that he makes us sound great every week. He's the editor of our show. I want to say thank you to Kate and Danny and Nick for helping on this week's episode, and shout out to everyone on the Discord that was hanging out with us. You are wonderful people, and thank you, the listener, for listening. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you. And that's the show.
So long. We had so much to say.
Yeah.
Zander's gonna be so fucking mad at me. Oh, I should hit stop.